Welcome back to Fair's Fair. You read the title, Debate as a Concept is Poisoned. Now, just for the start, not everything has to be a debate. Sometimes just talking to people will work just fine, sometimes there's just no reason to make a debate. There's a difference between someone making an argument for something and a random opinion of a stranger that you disagree with. A Twitch streamer off on a tangent saying that Lord of the Rings has no character development doesn't need to be debated because of, well, context. Firstly, Twitch chat isn't super conducive to a good discussion. Secondly, they're not a media reviewer, or at least in this scenario they're not. Their streams are not dedicated to in-depth analysis of media or formal discussion, unless of course they are. But then again, Twitch chat still isn't very good for debate. Though the issue with that statement, if it were in a more analysis-based piece of media, is the phrasing. They're welcome to an opinion on the original Lord of the Rings movies, but character development is a matter of what is or is not in the story, not really a matter of opinion. You can have the opinion that Megumin was the best part of Star Wars, but last I checked, she wasn't in the movies. And let's be honest, she only would have been an improvement to the sequel trilogy. Which is why defining and understanding terms is so important. But you don't have to debate every opinion that exists on the internet. Meanwhile, someone making a video to assert a point is inviting debate. Like this video. This video exists solely to assert a point, which I will eventually get to.
Get on with it!
But let's start with something useful by asking what is a debate. Put simply, it's a discussion around points of disagreement where arguments for each side are made and gone over to get a better understanding on their validity, reasoning, or perspective. It's a great thing that can help people come to an understanding, in theory. Though you'll notice that I didn't say that its goal is to prove that you're right. This may come as a surprise, but the world doesn't exist in pure black and white. Done properly, a debate could lead you to better understanding that maybe your points aren't as contradictory as you thought, that you were both wrong, maybe have a better understanding as to what the other side's reasoning is. And yes, finally, you could prove that one of you was right. This is where the poison starts. The trend of pseudo-intellectuals with entirely the wrong idea of what a debate is in concept. The idea that when entering the debate, one side is right and they're to prove the other side wrong, often clinging to the names of fallacies that they have little comprehension of, like this rocket scientist who somehow managed to not understand what a straw man fallacy is. How could you even fuck that up? It's one of the most well-known! Nothing makes you look dumber than trying to sound smart. So that means that using big words, even correctly, doesn't necessarily make you smart. Video games are the worst medium because they require you to externalize your cognition in a parameterized circuit, whereas the novel is the best medium because it consists of internalizing and adapting your own cognition to a foreign cognitive structure. As an alternative option, I could recommend that if you strain really hard, you might be able to externalize the full 32-volume set of Encyclopedia Britannica books that you seem to have shoved up your ass. Sorry, internalized in your rectum. Totally foreign to these types of people, it is possible to be wrong without committing a logical fallacy. Does Frodo have character motivations, personality traits, internal and external needs? Assuming you watch the movies, the answer is yes. With no logic offered, there's no fallacy to apply. Additionally, it is also possible to lose a debate while being right. If your logic you use to reach a conclusion is faulty, if you lack the information to counter the other side's points, or support your own, it might just be a matter of you being unable to articulate what you meant. While this means that you need to look into the topic as a whole better, it doesn't necessarily mean that your conclusion was wrong. For example, I could argue that the Earth is round, because circles are smooth and sand dunes look smooth. And sand dunes are the surface of the Earth, therefore the Earth is round. My logic is all over the place, huge context is ignored, that whole thing is a mess and would be easy to dismantle. The opponent says that Earth is flat because they can see a city that should be over the horizon, over the water. Now there's a lot of issues with that argument, but if I can't dispute any of them, then their position would seem more stable than mine, because those things are technically correct. There's a lensing effect that can form over water, by the way, that's why you can see part of the city. Just to be clear, the Earth is round. Probably. But what's really poisoning debate is the debate bros. a term referring to insistent people who throw around words like fallacy or intentionally use the worst form of any argument to insist that because one argument is wrong, theirs is right. People who walk into an argument certain that they are right, with no idea how to argue. You might have seen one of those podcasts of wannabe alpha males that invite women on for debate only to spend the whole time failing to debate. This one got really out of hand as they insisted that people should stay in physically abusive marriages because divorce isn't a real thing. His source is that the Bible says it isn't. I hate to tell him, but your disagreement with a concept has no bearing on its existence or practical effects on people. The debate bro culture has become so well known that the very idea of debate or discussion is associated almost exclusively with them. Rev insisting that he won't debate, when he very much has made arguments in videos, which is engaging in debate. Moist Critical, or Charlie, said that debate was a waste of time. He also makes arguments debating through video, and even discussing and arguing points in a call with Sneeko, which very much was a debate at several points. Just because no one uttered the word fallacy doesn't mean that debate wasn't had. In fact, it might be better that way. But it's not uncommon to refuse to talk to opposing sides, except through responding videos, for fear that they'll just be looking for a dunk, berating, throwing every catchphrase they've ever heard, and quoting fallacies right or wrong. In short, they could be debate bros. Not to diminish this idea either, I often won't even bother discussing things because I know it won't go anywhere. Twitter and Twitch chat are probably not even worth engaging on. But when it comes to entering voice chats, podcasts, and streams, the idea of stepping into a debate with the very real possibility that it will be a disingenuous attack box is not a comfy thought. Which is why I give massive credit to anyone willing to go on EFAP to defend their perspective after there was upwards of 4 people ripping into your content for 6+ hours. While I don't always agree with their takes, they usually are genuine in their discussions. A lot of this problem comes in a few major issues. First, the practice of these people occasionally saying obvious things or quoting takes that could be tangentially linked to their topic and are genuinely very hard to argue against. Gravity pulls down, the moon exists. Men committing suicide is bad. They say these things hoping that this buys validity in the minds of the passing listener. That way they can then transition into more controversial statements that they have not backed up, and you will just assume that those are similarly correct. Second, by identifying with a fandom, or really any large group identity, who will side with them regardless of the validity of their points purely because they agree with them. The side they're on becomes more important than why they're on it. Both of these are used by anti-nuclear power groups. Radiation is bad for you. No shit, Sherlock, thanks for the insight. Nuclear power doesn't irradiate people or places if you don't do literally everything wrong like Chernobyl did. Or the entire ocean doesn't bitch slap your reactor like what happened in Japan, which is mostly cleaned up already, by the way. This also ignores the issues and massive waste that solar, wind, coal produce in an uncontained manner even when everything is functioning properly. You're taking the dysfunction of 2 reactors while ignoring the proper function of several other forms of power generation. We are on the side of green energy, they claim, with no plan to contain the contaminations from the production waste chemicals or disposed of panels. They appeal to knee-jerk reactions and otherwise well-meaning ideas turned fandom to gain support for actions that aren't supported by reason. Shutting down nuclear power without a valid replacement in place does more harm than good. Lastly, for this video at least, the all-too-common black and white mentality, the idea that things must be all one way or the other. This comes up a lot in debates that intersect with ethics, some insisting that ethics are perfectly consistent in right and wrong with no question. This is obviously wrong, ethical gray areas are all over the place, though the other side would insist that because you can't draw a perfect line between them, that there is no difference and you must argue with only emotionless logic, which is a literal fallacy. Argument of the beard, to be specific. This fallacious argument was used in an article by Scientific America, of all places, to argue that life isn't real and there is no meaningful difference between you and a rock. This is, at the very least, a very unhelpful way to argue, and at worst, a dangerous one. You could certainly attempt to make a purely logical argument for certain forms of eugenics, but all of the human race, except apparently Movie Bob, have agreed that that's a bad can of worms to open. This line might as well not be in the video, but I figure I might as well try. Don't get too political in the comments. I won't engage with the more political comments lest I be placed on a side. So what is to be done, you ask me? Well, the best advice I can offer is to not give support to people just because they align with what you do. To hear and think about all their points, not just the ones that are obvious. Analyze your own beliefs and how you arrived at them. No one is perfect, I'm not expecting you to be. Sometimes you misspeak, sometimes it's not worth it over something minor. If you go into an average Twitch chat, disagreeing is fine. If you're trying to force a debate, you're probably being an asshole. Sorry if it doesn't feel like I've given many solutions, but to be totally honest, I don't have many of them. I'm at a bit of a loss. You can't stop people from making bad arguments, and people who just want to insult you can't be argued with. And there will always be those who stand by them because they like the content. But this video was more about why the word debate has such a negative connotation, and to rant about my personal peeve about people authoritatively making terrible arguments. But what do you think? Have you seen this trend of closing off discourse? The aversion to debate? The people abusing the word to intentionally challenge people they know won't be able to articulate a formal argument? You see, that's where these guys fucked up. You're not supposed to bring on people who make a good point. Or do you disagree with my take on this topic? Let me know in the comments as you like, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, save me from the algorithm. But if you don't think it's bad to be disingenuous in debate so long as you agree with it, then you can comment too. So long as you be entertainingly angry. This one got really out of hand as they accidentally insisted that people should stay and physically abuse... Actually, it wasn't an accident.